or Thursday.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening, everyone. I will open the meeting and ask if anybody has any public comment from the board tonight.
Yep, I do. The Lions Club is having their meat bingo this Saturday night from 7 to 9 at the Sportsman's Club on Reservoir Road. It's always a really fun time. There's a stormwater workshop tomorrow night from 7 to 9 at the Lunenburg Library. They've received 50 registrations so far, and we're very excited that so many people are interested in this timely topic that we can all do something about. The Board of Selectmen is seeking to increase local public transportation in response to resident requests. We're trying to find which of 3 proposed routes will work best for our citizens. There's a survey available online and at Public Safety, the town clerk's office, and the library. Please fill it out to help us help you.
Thank you. Any other? Mr. Ibersol.
2 items, one that was in the Lunenburg Ledger from Unitil, but also the Montechusett Opportunity Council provides assistance regarding fuel assistance for people, especially with tonight's first really cold night. If people are having a hard time meeting their heating bills, that they could contact Unitil or the Montechusett Opportunity Council in Fitchburg in order to find some assistance.
Thank you. Any other members have any public comment? Just have 2 announcements. First, I want to thank everybody who was involved with the Veterans Day ceremony. We had an absolutely fabulous weather day on last Tuesday morning, and it was surprisingly well attended. I mean, I'm surprised because it was an odd Tuesday. It was put together at the last moment, but there were probably over 100, around 100, or maybe even over 100 people there. I want to thank a few people for putting that on. First of all, the town manager, Kerry Spidell, for helping organize it, to Cliff Worthley, who put together the whole program for people to buy bricks in memory or in living memoriam of their family members who have served in the armed services, and who helped installing them, all the volunteers who helped install the bricks on that rainy Saturday, to Jamie Toll for emceeing the event, to Steve Archambault for playing taps there, to Ryan Seremper, who led us in prayer there, to the Boy Scouts of Troop 1728, who helped in the flag raising, to the police and fire officials who attended, also in helping the flag raising ceremony, and of course the Council on Aging staff who hosted the reception afterward. I heard nothing but good things about the event. And it's nice to see that kind of memorial to people who have certainly spent a good portion of their lives who deserve it. So thank you. On a more somber note, I think that everybody in town probably is aware that we had 2 large structural fires last Monday night, one on Mulpus Road and one on Crescent Road, not far from each other. In both cases, the majority structure of the home was lost, and so those families, the McLeod family, the McLeod-Warwick family, and the Madden family, are without their primary residences right now, and our hearts go out to them and their family. If there is any silver lining, nobody was seriously injured. It was just obviously years of memories, the property, the structure itself. So our hearts and prayers go out to them as they rebuild. I know there are some funds for monetary funds and material things that have been set up to assist those 2 families going forward. I don't have them right here, and they are available. Either you can go to Lunenburg Mass on Facebook, and I know they've been printed in both the Sentinel and Enterprise and the Lunenburg Ledger. Any public comment from the public today? Please. At the microphone. spotlight's not working today, so you have to wing it.
Hello, my name is Jack Mayer. As you know, I ran a spring service project for Project 351 last year as an 8th grader. I'm now a freshman at actually Neshoba Regional High School. I am doing a new food drive for Project 351 this year. It's for the Lunenburg Lions Club or the Lunenburg Food Bank. This drive will go from, I'd like to say now actually, to December 5th, but what we planned was December 1st to December 5th, but I feel like that's such a small range now that we should keep going. I actually went today to ask the manager of the Gulf Station up at the center town down the street if I was able to solicit food on Saturday, November 22nd, from 8 to 11. And ask for money and canned or box donations for food. And I will be having a few bins set up at the Boys and Girls Club at my school, Neshoba Regional High School, and also I'm hoping to go to LHS and actually have a bin set up there. And I have actually a question if I am allowed to set up a bin here with a sign just right in the front, if that's possible.
I don't see why not.
See why not?
Yes.
All right. And also, as I said last year, if there's any way you could just help me spread the word out. I know you guys have a Facebook, I think. Just spread it on there. I think I'm going to be writing something in the paper. I'm thinking about going on the local access again and with Joe, thanks to Jamie, and to do another short commercial about my drive. And that's about it. If there's anybody in the audience.
If you're thinking about putting something in the paper, I will let you know that this week's ledger is the townwide. So you have, I think they may be accepting things through tonight, so.
I know that it might have to be next week, but it's all right. Even though it'll get there.
Or you could talk to the reporter from the Lunenburg Ledger here tonight.
Oh. And that's about it. Thank you, and have a good night.
Thank you.
I have a question for you. If we write a check,
Yes,
who
that
should it
is
be
fine.
made out to, and where does it go?
It actually should be made out to the Lunenburg Lions Club. And as you guys know, Dave Berthium, he runs that, so, yeah.
He does. So get it to Dave or Lisa Normandin? Is that what you're saying?
What?
Oh, or Jan.
Yeah. Oh,
Okay,
actually, go to me. Yeah.
Get it to you?
Yes.
Or the Lions?
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
No problem.
Good luck.
Anybody else?
Thank
All
you
right.
very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jack.
Okay, we have two recognitions tonight from the Firefighter of the Year Award recipients, two from Lunenburg. I have two proclamations. Before I read and have us sign them, I know that the recipients are here. I know the chief is here. A lot of supporting colleagues are here. If everyone would come to the front.
Hello. Ladies and gentlemen.
I'll offer you the opportunity if you would like to say something, Chief.
Like I said, I think, most of you folks know Captain Reese and Firefighter Flag. Firefighter Flag was here before you back in January, after the incident where he was able to get Mr. Forrest out of the fire. Some of you may or may not know Captain Reese. He's the fire prevention officer for the department. He had received the Norman Knight Award for Public Service Excellence, which is basically, it's an award geared towards fire prevention and community relations, public service activities, for his efforts that are well above and beyond for fire prevention, working with the seniors in town, and furthering the goals of fire prevention within the community.
Excellent. I will read these. Would you like to, either one of you like to say anything before I read them? Okay. Good, thanks. Okay, proclamation, whereas Captain Jim Reese was appointed as a call firefighter in 1991 and appointed full-time in 2005, giving over 20 years in the fire department. And whereas Captain Reese has shown outstanding drive and initiative in his work with the seniors of the community. And whereas in late 2013, Captain Reese wrote the department's first Senior Safe grant and received a grant of $2,500. And whereas the Senior Center developed a program known as Sand for Seniors and formed a partnership with Jim. And whereas Captain Reese delivers the sand buckets and at the same time inspects the homes for working smoke and carbon monoxide detectors. And whereas the program proved to be a significant success, as he found out that 91% of the homes he visited had inoperative, obsolete, or non-existent detectors. And whereas Captain Reese did all this in addition to his normal duties as a line fire officer and the department's fire prevention officer. And whereas it is not unknown for Jim to be in the station returning phone calls even on his days off. And now therefore be it resolved that the Board of Selectmen does hereby recognize Captain Jim Reese for his dedicated efforts and unselfish commitment in serving the community and town of Lunenburg and receiving the Norman Knight Excellence in Community Service Award at the annual State Firefighter of the Year Awards. Signed, all of us, Board of Selectmen, November 18th, 2018. I will deliver both of them. And then I will come down and deliver them in person. So let me read also to firefighter. Whereas firefighter Austin Flagg was appointed as a call firefighter in 2009, giving him just over 5 years with the department. And whereas on Thursday, January 9th, 2014 at 11:46 a.m., the Lunenburg Fire Department was dispatched to a structure fire at 9 Rennie Street. And whereas firefighter Flagg was nearby and responded to the scene, arriving before any apparatus, donned his turnout gear, and proceeded to the rear door of the home. And whereas firefighter Flagg was able to glimpse a leg several feet inside the door, without the benefit of protective breathing apparatus, a hose line, or search rope, and with no regard for his personal safety, he entered the toxic atmosphere and pulled the victim out of the burning home, applied CPR, but the victim succumbed to his injuries. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the Board of Selectmen does hereby recognize firefighter Austin Flagg for his dedicated efforts and unselfish commitment in serving the community and the town of Lunenburg and receiving the annual State Firefighter of the Year Award for acts of heroism, signed by all of us Board of Selectmen members, November 18th, 2014. Let's sign them first, yes.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations. Okay, we're going to skip over number one for a second and go to a request for the Salvation Army boot drive for Saturday, December 13th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. Good evening, Mr. McDonald.
Dave McDonald, Island Road, Lunenburg. We're requesting to do a boot drive for the Salvation Army on Saturday the 13th from 8 a.m. to 3 p.m. at the intersection here outside the town hall and at CVS. Just so a little record, Salvation Army, we've been doing this for years. I want to thank some of the people here who's helped me on the boot drives. So you're going to see us out there again, I hope, with your approval. But all money stay local between the Fitchburg, Leominster, and Lunenburg area. So again, with your permission, we'd like to conduct it. And Lunenburg was fantastic to us last year. We were the #1 area to help the Salvation Army. So again, if you guys approve this tonight, that would be wonderful.
I go through obviously the requisite checklist. You've spoken with the police chief.
I think we invented it. Yes, we have we have the vests, and actually we're all Corey checked as well.
Okay.
And again, we try not to interfere with other activities going on in town. That's why we picked the 13th. And Mr. Alonso, if you'd like to come and ring the bell with us, we'll be there from 8 to 3.
Give me a call. I may do it.
Mr. Chair,
Mr. Toll.
I move that we approve the Salvation Army boot drive for Saturday, December 13th from 9 a.m. to 3 p.m.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
One more thing, Mr. Chair, if I could. This year, we're going to be doing the Christmas lights at the park, and I don't think we have to get approval from the board on that, or, okay. The other thing is, we're proud to have a new sponsor for our mailbox for the children, the Santa, and that would be PAC TV. So we have a lot of exciting things coming up. We talked to Joe McLaughlin. We have some surprises. So again, be on the lookout, but there's going to be some nice things happening with the mailbox in the town center. So again, thank you much, and hope you all have a good Thanksgiving.
Thanks, you too.
Thank you.
Okay, back to number 1. We will consider and take any... Oh, okay. First 3. Okay, we're going to jump to appointments and reappointments because we have people in the audience here. So, first, interview candidate for boards and committee vacancies. We have a candidate for applying for the Conservation Commission vacancy, Mr. Bradford Kennedy.
Good
Okay,
evening.
if you've seen these before, you know what I'm going to ask you. Just to introduce yourself and then
Yeah.
talk a little about yourself and why you want to be on the Conservation Commission.
Yes, I'm Brad Kennedy. I've lived in Lunenburg for about 30 years. Most of that time was over on the east side of town by Canterbury Drive, Harbor Street. About 8 years ago, I bought a property over on Whalum Lake, and we moved there and worked with a number of the town commissions as we did a addition to a house, and we're very happy that we're over there now. I've lived on lakes or had summer homes on lakes for years. We had a place up in Deering, New Hampshire, and I was part of the Lake Association up there. So I've been exposed and worked with the rules regarding wetlands around lakefront property for probably close to 30 years off and on. I haven't been able, or because of the work I do, I'm an engineer. I work at various places on 495 and inside of 495 into 128. So I haven't had time in the last bunch of years to spend any time on any of the town boards and things like that. And I'm getting to the point where I'm going to retire. And I'm going to have more time to spend. And I'd like to get involved more with the town activities than I have been in the past. My wife's in a lot of town activities. I had to support her. I know the basics around the wetlands. I've dealt with them off and on with the place up in New Hampshire and the place on Whalum Lake. I went through the laws on the website and sort of skimmed them. There was 243 pages worth of stuff, and I can honestly say I don't know a lot about it, or I didn't get any of the finer details, right? And I also did the same thing with the stormwater websites, and I got less out of that. So it's going to take a while. In my jobs, I've had to learn a lot of new things quickly, so that hasn't been an issue. Right. See, I found out about the opening. Where I live in Lunenburg, we don't get the TV channels that we used to get when we lived over in Canterbury. We're sort of on the Leominster edge, so we don't get the Lunenburg cable channel. So I found out about the opening on the Conservation Commission from one of my friends. And through him, I also learned about some early training that was going on. So sort of in one applying, but I didn't want to get behind the crew that have just been appointed and getting new training. So I've been wandering around with them on Saturday mornings looking at sites, just so that I'm at least not behind the curve any more than any of the other folks. So, now, you have any questions for me directly, or?
I have a few. What kind of engineer do you do?
I'm a software engineer, and before that, I was a hardware engineer. So I've done a lot of electrical and software pieces. Yeah.
Did you meet with the Conservation Commission? Obviously, you said you walked with them. Have
Yeah.
you met with them in the sit-down? Have you spoken with them?
Yes, I met, or I attended the first set of site inspections with the permission of Matt. And then their first meeting as a Conservation Commission was, I think, 2 Wednesdays ago, and I attended that one. And we went out, and I only can attend as a interested party at that point. And then I went to the site visits on Saturday. We went up to the house on Hollis Street and went to the Whalum Park, went to Lake Whalem's discharge spillway to check out the state of that, and met a number of my neighbors that I didn't know.
And obviously, they know that you were coming there because you were interested in the vacant.
Yes,
Okay, that's what
yes,
okay.
yes.
And we do have a letter from the Conservation Commission stating that they have reviewed the talent bank form, and they did have a chance to speak with him at their November 5th meeting. And the members of the Conservation Commission unanimously recommend that Mr. Kennedy be appointed to the commission.
Yeah.
So
I was a little embarrassed at that committee meeting. But,
I won't ask why.
yeah, well, it's just, yeah.
Anybody have a questions from the board?
The question I often ask is, have you been on any, it sounds like you've been on boards or commissions and understand the rules of order and how
Yes.
meetings are working?
I was the president of the Deering Lake Association, and the vice president over a couple of years. If you're the vice president, you get to make the coffee. But, yes. And
Sounds like a new position on the Conservation Commission.
yeah. And, yeah, I'm the last member. So, in the Deering Lake Association, we had 3 meetings a year. It was Memorial Day, 4th of July, and Labor Day. And basically, we went through the reports of the different committees. We had folks that worried about getting the signage on the houses around the lake, so if there was any safety issues, we could get the fire department to go to the right place. We got all the roads named. We had some that didn't have any names. So there was a lot of that type of activities. There were reports that we did around the water testing, and we worked with, I think it was the state organization, and we provided boats and things so that they could do their water testing on the lake. I don't know, I haven't found anything in Whalum that are doing similar things, but that'd be nice to have get started or rejuvenated.
Thank you.
Anybody else from the board have any questions? I see that the Conservation Commission is represented here. If you would like to say anything, or
Richard Burth, Chairman of the Lunenburg Conservation Commission, and Mr. Kennedy set up pretty much fully what he's been doing to prepare himself for the commission. He has attended our hearings, our meetings, our site visits. He has a willingness to learn the regulations and the issues that we have, a desire to help preserve the Lunenburg in the state that it's in now. And we did unanimously vote to recommend that he is appointed to the last open seat that we have.
I would entertain a motion then.
I would make a motion to appoint Mr. Kennedy to the Conservation Commission.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None. Congratulations and welcome aboard.
And thank you for coming forward.
Thank you
Yes.
for volunteering.
And I'll take this opportunity to say that as we fill each of these, we still have 2 vacancies. Well, there are probably others, but the 2 most pressing ones are the FinCom. There's a vacancy on the FinCom and a vacancy on PAC. One more.
2 vacancies on PAC.
Oh, 2 vacancies on PAC. Okay. So we need those 3 vacancies filled. We are looking for members to come forward, as Mr. Kennedy did, to put their names in and help out the town in those 2 very important arenas. Thank you. Okay, then we have number 2, seems to be pretty generic. Appoint candidates to various boards and committees.
I don't have anything for that.
Oh, okay. We want to ratify the appointment of John F. Moriali, Sr., to the position of Assistant Building Inspector.
So I have 2 appointments up for ratification this evening. The first is, as you mentioned, for the Assistant Building Inspector. And if I could ask Mr. Moriali and Adam if you would like to come up. Mr. Moriali was one of a number of people who applied for the Assistant Building Inspector positions. There were a handful of people who were interviewed by the Building Inspector and the Land Use Director a few weeks ago. And Mr. Moriali was the unanimous recommendation of the 2 interviewers. And I met with him, I believe, just last week, and to have his appointment before you this evening. He is a Lunenburg resident. He owned and operated his own construction company for 30 years. He worked for a few years as a facilities manager at a private business, I believe, a hospital setting.
Reliant Medical Group.
A healthcare setting.
Yep.
So he has that experience as well. He says that he is semi-retired and interested and available for a part-time position like this. He does operate a small construction company on the side, but that would not interfere with the position. As a local inspector, he is able to do work within the community, which is different than the building inspector. The building commissioner can't do work within the community. There is a requirement that the assistant building inspector be certified as a local building inspector within a year of appointment, and he is aware of that and is willing to pursue that certification. So I would like to put forth his appointment for your ratification this evening.
Would you like to say anything?
No, Carrie's
Your biographer
pretty much
do a
said
great
everything,
job.
and you pronounced my name correctly, so we're good.
When I see a name like that, I automatically pronounce it, as an
It's
Italian
spelled.
name, right?
Yeah.
So, and I was told from the previous proclamation that I was doing that wrongly for that candidate, so it's a 50-50 proposition, so I'm glad I got it right, thank you.
Yep. No, that's pretty much all of it for me.
And anybody have any questions for the town manager or for the applicant? Then I would entertain a motion.
I would make a motion to ratify the appointment of John F. Moriali to position of Assistant Building Inspector.
Do I have a second?
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Congratulations.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the second appointment to be ratified this evening is the appointment of Lisa Melnicki as the Public Safety Coordinator Front Desk Officer. I did not ask the chief and Lisa to come here. Lisa has worked for us for a little over 8 years. I believe that you are all familiar with her, so I did not ask her to come here this evening. This is a budgeted position in the current fiscal year budget. And we went through a internal recruitment process following our hiring procedures under the salary admin plan Officer Milnicki was the only person who applied for the position, but she is eminently qualified for the position and has essentially been serving in this capacity since July of 2013, when we transferred our dispatch over to the regional dispatch. This position is primarily responsible, the front desk officer. She will remain a duly appointed law enforcement officer, so she is able to handle things such as permitting, a gun permit, and permits like that that require to be processed by a law enforcement officer. She will also be responsible for monitoring lockup when we have anybody in lockup during her shift, which she has been doing for a number of years. Lisa also, as I mentioned in the information that I sent to you, she is one of 4 female officers. She will be the first full-time appointed female officer. That's something that has been important to me since the time that I've been here, and it's important for us to have a police staff that is representative of the public that we serve, and it's not having a female officer poses some problems because we have certain aspects of that position that can only be handled by a female. So it is good to have a female officer on. She is primarily responsible for certain types of investigations because she's trained, so she is of benefit to us there. And so I put forth her appointment for ratification this evening.
Any questions from the board for the town manager?
We're ratifying because it's a police position, or what's the?
Well, any position that I can appoint under the charter, the board must take up ratification.
Thank you.
I don't have a question, but I would just like to say that whenever I've had occasion to visit the public safety building or call the public safety, she's always been really polite, courteous, and professional, so I'm really happy to see her be appointed.
I would entertain a motion then, if there are no further questions.
I would make a motion to ratify the appointment of Lisa M. Melnicki to position of Public Safety Coordinator / Desk Officer.
Have a second.
Second?
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? None. Okay. We're going all the way back to number 1. Consider and take action on the right of first refusal of the Pellerin property, 90 West Townsend Road.
So I will kick this off. Adam Burney, our land use director, is also here this evening and can answer any questions regarding to any of the recommendations that the land use boards made. We did receive a notice of intent to sell property located at 90 West Townsend Road. The property has a Chapter 61B recreational land designation, and therefore when there is a sale that involves a change of use, the town has the right of first refusal on the property. We have a standard review practice of sending the notice of intent to sell to our land use boards, Conservation Commission, Planning Board, and Open Space Committee. We also send it to Town Council to review for legal compliance. So the notice, when it was received, it was sent to the 3 land use boards, Town Council, and because of the proximity to the Department of Public Works facility, I did send it to the DPW director to review as well. The Conservation Commission and Open Space Committee both reported back that the property in question does not meet its criteria, and therefore they were not recommending that the property be preserved. The Planning Board pointed out the proximity to the DPW facility and thought that that might be something that the town wanted to look at. Adam certainly can speak to that. In addition, they mentioned the proximity to the headwaters of the Mulpus Brook, which might be of interest to the town as well. Town Council, because I sent this out to everybody at the same time, I heard back from Conservation, and I knew because both Conservation and the Open Space Committee have written criteria for which they evaluate properties. I knew open space would not meet the open space criteria. But they had both responded that they weren't interested before I heard back from town council. As I mentioned in the information that was provided, town council did point out a number of legal deficiencies, but because there wasn't any interest, I didn't kick it back to town council to send a letter to the attorney. And I think that's one thing that I'd like, once you finish with this, just to clarify that you are, going forward, you're okay with that process, because in the time that I've been here, I don't think we've ever had a notice of intent to sell come to us that meets the legal requirements. And it's only been in the instances where there's some interest in the property that we have town council, that we pay for town council to send that letter out. The benefit of doing that is that if there is a defect in the notice, the town has 120 days from the date it receives the notice to consider the right of first refusal. If there's a defect in the notice, we send that to the owner, and when the owner responds back to us and provides us a notice that meets all of the legal requirements, that restarts that 120-day clock. So it's important, because 120 days is not a whole lot of time to act when we have to go to town meeting. So it's important, if there's any interest in the property, that we kind of preserve that. But because there wasn't here, and there hasn't been in the past, we haven't done that. But I thought, because it comes up, I think you should tell me if you're okay with that or if you're not okay with that. We can take that up after. But at this point, and there isn't any interest in the land use boards in the property, the DPW director did review it and doesn't have any significant interest in the property, doesn't think that if we were to expand DPW, and I'm not sure how likely that is, but if we were to expand, we wouldn't be going in that direction. So he is not particularly interested or doesn't see a particular need for the town to act on its right of first refusal at this point. So with that, I would open it up for questions, and also, again, Adam Burney, the land use director, is here and could answer questions you have relative to this application.
I guess just on the planning board brings up a good point in their review and notice that it is adjacent to, it is not in proximity of, it is adjacent to the property of DPW facility. And while we have criteria set by the Open Space Committee, and certainly the Conservation Commission has criteria on which they judge whether we should choose something because of conservation or ecological reasons, I don't know that we have a mechanism that indicates a series of criteria that we as a town would use to see if neighboring properties of existing facilities make sense for leaving open the possibility in the future of expansion of whatever department. It may be, maybe this doesn't fit that as the DPW director states, but we should try to establish a criteria of how we would judge that and what lands are important in projected expansion. So that I would use this opportunity as a springboard that conversation, although I don't think it would necessarily pertain to this particular property in this case. My opinion.
No, I think that makes sense, because once land is gone,
Right.
it's gone.
I mean, the last thing you want to do is have something that needs to be expanded and you're hamstrung because you don't have the available property to do it. So.
And what would be the appropriate body to make that
You're
decision?
a member of it.
Yeah, that's what I thought. It would be us, right? Yeah.
But we would want to know what criteria. We would want to work with the planning board. We want to work with all the land use departments, and with the department heads themselves. So we have a good feeling about, I mean, I think the buildings that we have, because most of them are relatively new, we're not really faced with that. But we also have to think beyond a 3-year or 5-year time frame. We really have to think down the road and what might happen. So
I think that would be good to maybe have that on, not necessarily part of our goals, but part of the discussion of what we would think about, because any department, we have a new public safety building, but at some point, would we want to have a substation someplace?
Right.
What's the school going to need? We have the campus at the moment, but I think your concept of us being in charge of the non-open space, non-conservation, non-land use response would make sense to try to coordinate that.
Maybe that's another topic we should have with the planning board as we make a list of topics.
I agree, and even in the letter from the DPW director, he points out that, there could be some benefit to Public Works to provide an area of future expansion, but however, given the recent renovations at the facility and the difficulty of finances, that he felt that funds could be directed in other areas, but he didn't actually take it off the table as, since it does abut the DPW, but there's no real identified need right now. But I think coming up with a criteria similar to what the open space did makes sense.
Do the various departments, do we have any way of cataloging or projecting what their expansion needs? Do they provide us with some kind of timeline, however far out it is?
For expansion of
Physical
buildings?
expansion, right.
No, and I would say, because for the most part, aside from what we're going to do here with Town Hall and Ritter, I think both chiefs would say that the public safety facility is adequate for the long term. I think the DPW director would likely say the same. I think his interest maybe was more just in a buffer, not necessarily expanding over there, that it might make sense to have a buffer at some point. But, no, we don't, and it would be good to even have on record if, I'm satisfied with
Right.
what the facilities are.
I mean, the other thing would be, I'm assuming that parks falls within open space for ball fields and things like that, but I don't know if active recreation falls within open space.
Not
No, it
active.
doesn't. No, it
Not
does not.
active.
Okay, so that might be one of the departments that we might think about, not necessarily taking the land or buying the land for a building, but maybe for parks, especially as we look at the various 40B developments and trying to provide opportunities to maintain space around those as well.
I did just have one question for conservation, and I see Jan's here. So there's a piece, if I'm reading this map correctly, there is a piece of conservation land, the Brown conservation land, that abuts this piece, or maybe I'm not reading the map correctly. Do you?
Oh, that was, the Brown property is the property you're talking about. Betty Pellerin owns it now. She was his niece.
It would be this piece, yeah.
So on the map that we have a red piece that's identified as the Pellerin property, and then we have a green piece adjacent to it that's identified as the Brown conservation land.
And then there's a Brown property.
And then
right
there's the
of way.
Brown property right away, and I'm just a little bit confused because,
I'll have to look at it.
I guess the other question I would have is whether the property between the Pellerin property and the conservation restriction to the east of that, whether that's in a chapter property as well, off of Northfield Road, a large parcel that's behind the DPW property with frontage in a house.
yeah, I had that question too.
What?
What is that?
The
big piece-
non-shaded area?
Yeah,
In between.
Well, it
the-
looks like a house on Northfield.
Right, so the question is the land in back in chapter land as well?
right, because if it is, that's a significant parcel along the Mulpus that could be potentially protected.
And then would tie in with the,
Lane property. That's a question, is where does it fall in that?
and the,
I don't think the Lane property is anywhere here.
I don't know.
No. Yeah, that's what Bob's asking.
Is that in chapter?
I would imagine it is, but I can't.
Oh, Jan's
I
got a
can't
big
tell
map.
you.
Yeah, because
What
that's
that
gotta
is.
be, that's gotta be like 40 acres.
At
That
least.
has all the chapter land on there too, Jan?
This, there's a
No.
piece of conservation land behind the house on Northfield Road,
Right,
which abuts
right.
part of that
That's
land
what we're
down there, and
looking
the
at.
other is in 61. But what you have on that map is green, I don't know, it's not
Oh, so
conservation.
the map that we see that is green next to the Pellerin isn't conservation land? That's bizarre.
Who did the-
Well,
Who did
again, the Conservation Commission has looked at this and has given a determination, so I'm assuming they know where the conservation land is.
Well, I'm just confused because
I am too.
this map that we have isn't correct then. And I don't
Unless
know.
it's something somebody has recently put into 61A, but we haven't received any notification of it.
Because it's actually identified as Brown Conservation Land.
And Brown property right
And then
away.
Brown property right-of-way, which I'm confused about as well, because if you look at the parcel further on down on Northfield, the shaded one, I don't know what that is. Because if you,
Right.
because that's identified as Brown property right-of-way, but that doesn't make any sense, because obviously that's,
That particular map was supplied by the Open Space Committee.
So I guess part of the question I would have, though, is not just conservation land, but whatever is chapter land.
Yeah,
That your map is conservation land, that's not chapter land?
this is all I did, yes,
Yeah,
from the
which-
town
which-
records.
Right, makes sense.
The one that must have come from Brandon Kibbe, and he's pretty accurate, but I don't have any record of it here.
so what do you have as conservation land?
There's just the house on Northfield Road, almost across from Violet's stand. Out in back of that house is a piece of conservation land.
So that would be the Brown property.
Right, that would be what they're showing as the Brown property.
But it's not the piece of property that's shown, it's not shown correctly on that map.
But that's the one, well, it is. It's the one directly across from Violet.
It's the.
There's the
across-
Violets, because this is,
There's the pasture right across from Violet's.
right, Highland is that intersection right there.
And the
Oh,
land.
okay, maybe I looked at the map wrong, so.
So then this would be adjacent to that property.
Yeah, I want to look at that map too.
There are stairs.
No workers' comp claims.
Right, this is the land, here's Highland right here. And this is
Okay,
Northfield.
I
So
thought
here's
it
the
was-
house across from Violet, and there's the,
Okay, I
That's
thought
it.
it was going
So
down
it's-
to there too.
no, see, it's the shape of the property is exactly the
Yeah.
same as this one.
But with the stone wall there.
But that's just a
Yeah.
right-of-way.
Yeah, okay.
That's just a right-of-way.
Yeah, and there's a right-of-way in from here too.
Right. Okay.
Okay. All right, sorry.
And I know my phone doesn't.
This is correct.
My phone doesn't have the ability to pick up the map that the assessors map, but one of the layers I think they have is chapter land on that.
Yeah, I mean, so we can get you a more detailed map and identify the chapter land and,
But let's just say it is, because it's that large, my guess is it's probably in chapter.
yeah.
So,
At that point, I mean, when we look at the intent of what we're trying to do with Chapter 61A, which is to try to possibly take land that's been protected for a while and to continue to protect it under the town and possibly to have it as a usable space, I don't know how much of this land to the right of this, behind the DPW would be within wetlands, that if that was available, we would want that. And once that were the case, then would it make sense to have everything all together? Because the assumption is the house on Northfield Road would probably maintain most of its frontage, and you'd need to have access somewhere else. And I think that we need to think of it in the more global of future parcels that may come on the market. If that's not a chapter property, I understand how this is separate, but for $70,000, which I think the P&S is, it's a small amount of money if there's a possibility that this could tie with some other land that we might want to get as well.
and if there's a potential for expansion at some point at DPW. Now, I know that's not on the table right now and possibly not in the near future, but once the land is gone, we can't get it back. So the other question that I have is looking at the Brown piece, it seems to be a very small parcel with limited access. And I just have a question as to how it ended up as conservation land, and is there a reason that the Conservation Commission acquired that piece? You know, were there the criteria by which that land was desirable?
I'd have to go back to the records and look and see when it was acquired.
Could have been donated. Could have been donated.
Yeah.
May not be something we bought. Somebody just gave to us.
Well, and if it's the Brown Conservation, then that would be probably Harry Brown.
I've never heard it referred to as that, but I thought it was just in 601A.
I mean, the deed that's talking about, that's included in our packet, talks about it coming from Harry Brown, the whole parcel, and he probably owned, because that's where the original proprietors would have done the DPW property, all the way up West Townsend Road, on the easterly side, going from Northfield to Chase Road. So, and I believe that he was giving lots of land to the town at various times.
Do we know what this is?
No. So I think the property to the far right, it says, I think that's the one that says CR.
That's a CR, APR.
CR, APR.
I was just asking the town manager.
What is that?
Conservation restriction.
And APR, which is the farm.
Agricultural.
Agricultural preservation.
Protection restriction.
I mean, it would be great if that other property is a possible chapter land.
Yeah, I mean, that would tie all of that together.
So you do have time, if you want to continue this to your next meeting, we can do some additional research and get that back to you.
I would like to table it. I would like to understand more about the Brown property and why it was, was it just donated or was there a reason? And even reading, I understand conservation looked at it, but even reading the DPW's director letter, he notes, it's a habitat to deer, wild turkey, moose, coyote, and fisher cat, all of which have been observed from DPW. I'd like to understand more about the backland and how potentially that whole tract could be protected before we take action.
Okay.
Thank you.
So that is what we're going to do. We will table this until we get that information. This is continued. Snafu in the paperwork, we're going to table number 3 again because it was not brought here. That was my bad.
So our goal will be to have a goal?
The goal is to have that not tabled again. Minutes. Okay, this is the one I wasn't at.
Is this the one that I sent? The
Yes, and
request to
I
have
did.
Modified?
Yes.
I did make the change and put a note that Selectwoman Bertram asked that it the minutes be made clear that she left the meeting, that she left the room. So I included that.
Thank you.
Warrants.
You have a
Lot of warrants. Accounts payable in the amount of $469,256.70. This is it, okay. I see we have snow supplies here. How are we set to DPW? Because it looks like it's going to be a bumpy ride.
Well, we purchase sand and salt up front, at least half of what we expect our supply to be, so we have made those purchases.
And luckily, we don't have lake effect snow here in Lunenburg.
Oh my God, yeah. 3 feet in Buffalo.
How many?
3 feet.
Projected,
Not even Thanksgiving.
projected to be 6.
Close the thruway.
It's fluffy, but it's still snow.
School construction.
School construction in the amount of $3,770,324.90.
That's progress.
That's what?
That's progress.
Yeah.
You guys want both folders or just the cover?
You want
Up here?
the second stack of
No,
this?
just
No.
Payroll in the amount of $675,741.23. And payroll deductions in the amount of $267,318.31. Okay, action file issues. No action file issues. Committee reports, Board of Health,
no report.
Building reuse.
Building reuse is, as I mentioned last time, concentrating on Town Hall at this moment, and we are recommending a short-term capital expense proposal for the Town Hall for painting, et cetera, for FY16, and a detailed but brief feasibility study for centralizing the municipal offices, which will become more clear at our December 1st meeting and reviewed by the Capital Planning Committee.
Capital planning, then.
Okay, we met this afternoon, reviewed the input from the schools and the police department. In addition, the website is up to date, and all of the FY16 original submissions are now on the website. So we're reviewing them, but they're all there. The thick binder that we worked from is available for review on the website under the capital plan tab.
Mr. Chairman, can I just go back to the building reuse, because I just have a question. Do you have a number for the capital plan yet, or are you still working on the number to be submitted for the town hall study?
For the study portion, the number that we're going to put into the FY16 capital plan is just for the feasibility piece, and it will relook at some data-driven assumptions around combining municipal offices in, as we originally recommended, the town hall, or looking at alternatives like the Ritter building or TCP, et cetera. But it's just the study, and we're assuming that'll be around in the neighborhood of $15,000. But the actual cost to do any renovations or reconstruction, we're recommending we put off until the FY17 capital plan review based on that.
Is that study, one of the big concerns I have about the idea of moving everyone over here is the parking issue. I mean, if you go to the Ritter building today, the parking lot is filled just with staff cars, never mind the people that are going in to do business within the Ritter building. Parking for town hall is extremely limited, so that's one of my concerns. I also have others that I've expressed before about how logistically we're going to fit everyone in the building and maintain meeting space. But what about the parking issue?
That is the idea is that is what the feasibility study kind of wants to look at, because yet there's a couple issues. One is parking, clearly that's true. There's also the look at the Ritter building and the space behind it, in addition to just the space that's in front of it, you know, the current small lot there. The other thing, quite frankly, that's driving this feasibility is that the initial projections to renovate Town Hall and to outfit it as a municipal building could be in the neighborhood of $3 million. And we said, gee, if we had a green space someplace, you could build quite a municipal office building for less than $3 million with parking and everything else.
Well, that goes back to the Pellerin property.
But then you begin to talk about, okay, so what do you do with Town Hall? What do you do with the Ritter, et cetera? So what we decided to do, or what we're recommending, because it'll depend on the capital planning and the budgeting process, but what we're recommending is to review in more detail with more data exactly those issues like parking, like what is marketable in the real world given parking. You know, we talked about the Ritter being marketable. Well, the parking becomes an issue there as well. So what we're saying is, yeah, we'd like to look at it so that we can feel very comfortable at the end of that study that we would go to a town meeting to say, here's the plan and here's what it would cost over the next X number of years. And then the next step was always to be and at least a partial funding source would be reuse of existing properties. We would have to come up with a reasonable use for the town hall. If in fact we were going to say we're going to centralize municipal offices someplace else.
Mm-hmm. So this is I just want to understand. So it's not necessarily just a feasibility study for the town hall itself. It's a feasibility study for town-owned buildings, or is it?
No. Right now, our charter has been limited. The Building Reuse Committee's charter has been limited at the current moment due to zoning issues that are being reviewed and school issues that are being reviewed in terms of what's available to us. So the only really properties that are kind of on our plate at the moment are the Ritter and the town hall. So we're concentrating on what role they play in the whole puzzle. And what we're suggesting is that originally our proposal was to consolidate municipal offices that currently exist in the Ritter building and town hall in town hall. And we want to be sure that that's still the right approach, given parking, given the amount of construction that would be required to do that, and given other alternatives, which might be to put them in Ritter, might be to start with a green space and build something. But all those decisions would include a decision on what is left when you do that consolidation, and what do you do with that to the best use of the town.
Well, to me, this raises a couple questions. One is the primary annex, or the old primary school. That's in very close proximity to the Ritter. Whether or not that square footage makes sense to look at for municipal space, whether or not it makes sense to tie that in. I don't know if you guys have had an opportunity to take a look
that would be part of it as well.
So it's
right.
Those three buildings?
Right.
You know, and the other thing is you mentioned green space, and I have to tell you, it's sort of a red flag to me when we're talking about a piece of property that's, you know, what is it, 13 acres adjacent to the existing DPW facility. If that really is something we want to at least entertain, that raises my concern about the right of first refusal on the Pellerin.
And while I agree with you, I don't want to get hung up on the technical term green space. What I was saying is someplace other than an existing building.
Right, I understand that, but you raise a very valid point that if we're looking at, you know, a $3 million plus renovation, does it make sense to do that? But it's certainly, if we don't have the facilities or the land area to do something else, then we really don't, we are out of options.
And as long as we understand both sides of the equation, it's not just cost, it's also cost avoidance, because you do have a town hall that we own today that requires a certain amount of rehabilitation just to stand up.
Right.
And that's kind of part of the process as well.
And you guys have all the most recent study on the building that was done by an architect?
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And was there a study at some point, somewhere in our annals, about considering the primary school for town hall? Because I thought at one point it was looked at and then decided not to. It was simply a discussion. It never went farther than that. But I don't know whether or not it makes sense, but I certainly think it's worth looking at.
The primary school became part of our charter when the proposal for senior housing went away. So it was not there from the beginning, and is something that we now want to very definitely make sure it's part of our discussions. But at first blush, it appeared to be kind of too big for that need. But that doesn't that doesn't mean it shouldn't be part of our feasibility discussion, especially when you talk about parking.
Talk about parking and talk about marketability.
Exactly.
Because we have to do something with that building.
Right, although that building is probably more marketable than Town Hall is vis-à-vis parking.
Right, but provided that when we look at the parking for Town Hall, that we maintain whatever parking is necessary to ensure the marketability of that piece.
Right.
And that's part of the discussion that needs to go on in the center discussion during that process, because the fact is there is not enough parking in the center town, period.
Exactly.
And the reality is that we probably need a parking structure somewhere, and that becomes an expense, and how does that get paid for, and what are we going to support, and where does it make sense? So I think there's a lot of discussion that needs to go on beyond the reuse committee, because you're charged with buildings, but I think that's the whole concept. The other issue becomes is that if you move a town hall out of a center of a town, it changes the center of town. It's the same thing as moving out of the post office, which they haven't moved out of the center of town, they moved it down the street. Just the whole concept of what is our town center. At the same time, we need to have a functioning town hall, municipal offices.
Right. So is it the intent to do an RFP for services, or what is with this funding, if it's appropriated?
The intent is to do an RFP for a feasibility study and to take into consideration parking, cost of rehabilitation versus cost of construction, to look at several properties. The ones that are currently coming to mind are Ritter, the old primary, the current town hall, and some, I use the term green space, but some space to be built upon that doesn't exist today. One of the things that just came up, and I don't want to start rumors because it hasn't been discussed at all, but in the capital planning meeting today, there was an expense request for moving the superintendent's office as part of moving out at Passios. Now, is that the kind of office that could be part of a municipal type structure or not? It came up. So that, things like that, things like a parking building could all be part, as we build the RFP, they could be part of a feasibility study.
Is that different than moving the superintendent to Turkey Hill?
Well, the request was the expense involved in moving the superintendent to Turkey Hill.
Oh, okay.
And the offhand comment without any deliberation at capital planning was, can we consider that as we talk about, providing municipal office space? Would that in fact make a larger building like the primary school or Ritter or something else be more attractive?
Oh, okay.
And it hasn't been studied, and I don't want it to sound like it's a decision, but it could certainly be one of the factors in the feasibility study. So yes, the request would be, to go back to my original bullet point, instead of the $85,000 that was originally in the capital plan for extensive engineering of Town Hall for FY16, we want to do a feasibility study for considerably less money, and at the same time we're putting in a request that may or may not make the priority list to kind of put a facelift on the current Town Hall, because we've put that off several years as we talked about this, and we're going to at least put on the list, maybe it's time for at least a paint job, even if it needs to be redone again as part of a bigger process a couple of years down the road.
I'm just a little bit concerned. It seems like this is a very extensive feasibility study. If you're looking at 3 buildings and parking issues as well as structural issues, space issues, I'm not sure 15,000 is enough. I don't know. It's out of my field, and I know many of the people on the building reuse are. It just seems like there's a whole bunch of different individuals or consultants that with a breadth of knowledge.
I'll be very practical. One of the consultants that's working with the building reuse said that if we put an RFP out for a feasibility in the 70,000 range, we're going to have every architect in Massachusetts that wants to be part of it. And if we put one out for 15 to 20, we're going to have 2 or 3 serious people that can help us really make a decision. Now,
Okay.
I don't know if that's true, and we can debate that as we go through the budgeting process, but that's our thinking.
Okay. And so, obviously, you're looking for the funding, so do you have a timeline on the RFP?
It would be part of the capital planning process unless we come up with a decision that says it's more urgent than that, and we have to find 15 to 20 grand.
So we're looking at next fiscal year before we even do the RFP?
Right.
Okay.
Finance Committee.
Okay, the Finance Committee...
Opportunity.
Finance Committee held their...
To the next committee, to the next committee.
Exactly. They're all related, and very many of the same people are on all three. They are doing something this year called Meet and Greet, where they're meeting with department heads to kind of discuss their budget requests and help them consolidate their thoughts and their discussions prior to the public hearings. So at their November 13th meeting, they met with the police, fire, and the senior center. And at their December 11th meeting, they're going to meet with the land use department, departments through the land use director and the DPW. And the objective there is just to help them kind of formulate their budget presentation for the public hearings during the budget season. Obviously, those meetings are open to the public as well, so, but, so the next meeting is December 11th.
So that should make those final budget meetings flow a lot better.
That's the objective.
Great.
Thank you. Library Board of Trustees.
They're meeting Thursday.
MPO.
I did not attend, but Phyllis did, so.
There was a presentation by the Montechusett Regional Trails Coalition. These people were founded in 2012 to advance the development of diverse greenways in our region and trails. They're in the process of developing a regional trail vision. They have free trail walks scheduled in area towns like from Nashua to Sterling once a month through next May. And they're looking for towns who'd like to host walks in June and July. The parking, I guess, is an issue. You need to have adequate parking, but it'd be great to be included in that. They meet the first Tuesday of each month at 9 a.m. at the Montechusett Regional Planning Commission. There was a coordinated public transit human services plan update draft presented at the meeting, and the final draft will be presented at the next MPO meeting. The Secretary of the DOT wants them to include some specific recommendations as opposed to, higher vision things. So that should be interesting.
Thank you. Planning Board.
I was out of town last week, so I know you attended a portion of it, Mr. Alonso.
Yeah, I attended the portion that had to do with the solar farm application on Flat Hill Road. And again, there was further discussion with the applicant and further discussion amongst the board. I mean, it's all on YouTube. I will say that in the end, it turned out by a 2 in favor, 1 against, 1 abstention, and 1 recusal vote. The application was denied, basically for lack of setbacks and the concern of the neighbors in that area to what the farm would be. It would be too close to their property and sight lines and things like that. That was in a nutshell. But that was part of a 3-session public hearing continuance, so
Yeah.
a lot of information. I did not stay past that element.
Yeah, and I haven't had.
I do know that the Highfield Village was once again continued. Yes. Mr. Bernie. He was there for the whole meeting.
He was there.
For the entire time.
One important item of note that did come from the last planning board meeting on Monday, the 24th of November, this coming Monday, they will be taking up comments on a revised draft of the village district bylaw. I know that Mr. Ebersol has requested a copy of it. I can forward it around to the remainder of the board. And I don't know that there'll be a final resolution, but I think that we're closer to a complete bylaw. And clearly, there's some discussion to be had about some of the uses, which sort of continues the October 6th discussion, but this hopefully is a little more restrained and a little more rounded, and will give us a better, more pointed place to start from. So I think that's probably an important thing to note from the last meeting.
Yes, if you can provide that, because I will not be here next week.
It was sent out yesterday. What was sent out yesterday is the most updated draft and map.
Okay, great.
A question as to, now, after you receive these comments, is it the intent to have a public hearing on this bylaw, or what is
That's the requirement by law.
Right.
So prior to going to town meeting, there'll have to be a public hearing. I would expect, and I'm still feeling my way out to the way that they're used to doing things. The way that I would generally do it is, as the warrant article gets placed, that's when they'll start to hold the public hearing. The public hearing just has to be held prior to the publishing of the warrant. So when the warrant opens, we'll look at scheduling the hearing at that point, so it's a little bit closer to town meeting. So we don't hold the hearing in December, everybody says yay, and then it just kind of sneaks in the warrant and everybody forgets about it.
I know there was some discussion a couple meetings ago about this, and one of the concerns that I have is, in the event that you hold a public hearing, and there is significant requests from residents that have the planning board go back and revise it based on the feedback they received, is there going to be enough time between when the warrant article comes forward and to make any adjustments based on public input? And I know that Mr. Lockwood raised that, or it was either Damon or Nathan that raised that concern. So I just would...
Yeah, and I think that we can work that out. And I think that that's part of why we want to have the discussions now on the completed bylaw, with the hope that the majority of major comments are going to come now. And that way, when the public hearing comes around, we're at a point where it may be a comma here or a use there, as opposed to a structural change to the bylaw.
So the meeting on the 24th has it been publicized as a hearing on the,
it's not a hearing.
It's not a hearing, but
it's a continued working session.
Okay.
I submitted the completed draft, or the completed current draft, to the board, and asked them to take it home, read it, process it, and make comment, so that we can go through and discuss their pointed comment, start to discuss where that takes the bylaw, and continue with the working sessions until they all say, everybody says we all hate it equally, or this is the best thing we've ever done and we're ready to move it along. I don't expect anything to be finalized on Monday.
Okay.
I would take the opportunity to support what Mrs. Bertram is saying, insofar as I don't think we want the public hearing to be something we just need to check off the list and it's pro forma. We really want a public hearing where, God forbid, we actually hear the public. And so that there is ample time. I understand you would probably not want to have a public hearing until past the end of January anyway, because again, we don't want people to, but in what you said, to reiterate what you said, we don't want people to forget about it, and then it's like, oh, well, what is this? And it feels like they're visiting it for the first time. But by the same token, we don't want to put it so close and say, well, we did have a public hearing, we did exactly what the law requires, but there was no time to listen to what people's comments were, and possibly, again, it's a potential of incorporation. It's not the necessity of incorporation.
Yeah, and again, I appreciate that comment. I think where I come from is I hope that through the working sessions, we can hear the public. And not that the public hearing is, sort of a throwaway, check the box off, but that we've had the opportunity. I know that, the first discussion I've had on this bylaw was the first day I was here, but it seemed like there was a number of public comment to it. And my hope would be that this process sort of ferrets out a lot of that public comment, so that we're not debating the merits of words and sections at the public hearing. We're debating the final product. And again, I can appreciate that, and I do agree that we want to have some cushion to be able to continue it for one or two meetings.
I would just caution you, I don't know that there has been a lot of vetting from the public. I mean, I've been in attendance. There was a charrette, which for a charrette in Lunenburg was very well attended. And there was it was a great charrette. There was public breakout sessions, but even at that charrette, there's a lot of concern from residents in the area, as well as just citizens, because it's the town center, it's the heart of the town. And I think there is a lot of concern about what this final bylaw is going to be. And I don't believe that it has been vetted yet by the public. I think the only individuals that have seen it are different boards or individuals that attend the planning board, and as you know, they're not very widely attended. So I am potentially concerned if to hold a public hearing once the warrant article is done, I feel is not going to give the public ample opportunity to comment, because I do envision that there's going to be comment.
Okay, I appreciate your comment, and I'll take that under advisement.
The other thing I was going to say under the comment section is that I have had a chance to quickly look at that, and I appreciate the various changes. It's interesting, I complained that the district was too high, which included it, and now I'm no longer in it. But now my neighbor is, and therefore I would be living next to something. So, and it's like, you know, when one of the planning board members is in the district, and that's fine because it's all allowed because it's a major project. I think that at some point when the planning board has come up with its version that it feels comfortable with, that a mailing at least to the people that are impacted within the district, because there's a large amount, would be an outreach and not just a charrette, because the charrette was very good. I attended it as well. There was some good conceptuals, but it's the rubber hits the road, and and it's one thing to have the bylaw, it's another thing to look at the map, and that's when you actually see what's involved.
Sure.
And I think that I also, when I watched the planning board meeting, they talked about wanting to do something about historical preservation as well, and whether there should be a historical commission that actually has a district that would be a zoning and would be protection, because my comment at the planning board meeting was the original version of the bylaw without any protections would effectively obliterate the historic district, because people, as a matter of right, would be able to do a lot, and then by special permit would be able to do other things even further. And in light of Stone Farm gas station and all the various other things that have gone on in town with unintended expectations, the solar bylaw, I'm just concerned with doing something that in concept makes sense, but without it being, is this really what we want to do? We're effectively making the center of town a commercial district, even though it's not truly commercial, but the average person would consider it to be commercial.
So looking for the unintended consequences.
Yeah, right, exactly, and there was a great deal of discussion at one of the meetings about that. Is, you know, if you had a historic structure, but yet your property was more valuable as a commercial entity, then although we have a demolition delay bylaw, there's nothing to prohibit the demolition of historical properties for a commercial enterprise.
And the fact is, you could come up with a bylaw that would protect the historical structure, but do we still want to turn that into a commercial structure?
Right.
That's part of my concern as well, is that we have a residential center in many ways, and I personally like a residential center. The question becomes, when does commercial end and when does it begin? And I think that's the discussion the planning board has started to have, but I think that in order to make a successful article, there needs to be true public outreach and not call them hearings, so that therefore you've got all those done, and then the hearing really does become the pro forma, because after that point you almost don't have any ability to change it.
Sure.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Pack we're still trying to fill. School committee.
School committee met on November 5th. It began with Best Buddies program at the high school being featured. It was really heartwarming to see how students with disabilities and those without have bonded and worked to develop relationships that truly help each other. It was really nice. During the budget discussions, the nursing department requested $7,910 for supplies such as EpiPens. John Launder requested $80,000 more for this coming year to cover expected rises in the cost of energy. School Committee Chair Berthume expressed his concern that Londa make sure that his figure was not an underestimate, but Mr. Londa reassured him that it was not. Mike Mackin informed the committee that the Lunenburg Boys and Girls Club has increased usage dramatically and is in need of additional funding to maintain its programs. And the school committee meets again tomorrow night at the Passios.
School Building Committee, so on the Thursday, November 6th, we had an abutters meeting that I think we had an abutter. So that's good, because it means that as far as the neighborhood is concerned, everything, they know what to expect. Nothing is happening out of the ordinary, which is good. As far as the project, the foundations continue to be poured, and that is all on track. The steel will arrive sometime in the beginning of December, and the steel work will be, weather permitting, of course, the steel work will begin sometime in the middle of December. So that is fine. The front fields are all sodded, and that's all completed. And I was not at last Wednesday's meeting because I was at the Zoning Board of Appeals meeting, so I had dueling meetings. But otherwise, the only other thing I know that they're addressing is we're considering whether to do in-progress aerial photos of the site, so that not only for the historical record, but also so that the town can see from one complete view instead of a side view. You can see what is happening on the building, and they would be at several periods during the construction, so every month or so that we would do a series. So we're debating that, and that should be decided at the next meeting.
Where would the funding come from? It is for
Part of
that?
the project. Yep.
Okay.
So, other than that, there's nothing else to report. Sewer Commission.
Sewer Commission is meeting tonight. One of the items they're continuing to review with the zoning board representatives is about the Whalum luxury apartments and the privilege fee and connection fee charges. So that's an ongoing discussion. They also have a Conservation Commission hearing on December 3rd regarding the Pratt Street Lakeview Avenue sewer installation, because there may be some impacts on wetlands based on where the pipes are going or within the excuse me, the various jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission on that. And that's it for sewer.
Okay, town manager reports.
I have for your consideration, or actually for your signature this evening, a request from Genghis Inc. doing business as Center Pizza and Variety for Sunday sales beginning at 10 a.m. The last time this came up, I mentioned to you that the state law has changed. It now requires package stores to begin sales at 10 a.m. on Sunday. There is no vote that is needed by the local licensing authority because it's something that is a matter of right, but they do have to fill out the Form 43, which requires your signature. So I'm presenting that to you this evening for signature.
And the law doesn't require they open at 10, but it allows them.
It allows them to open up at 10, yes.
And just for clarity, so if they don't fill out the paperwork, they're still only allowed to open at noon or whatever the normal thing is, right?
That's correct.
So if I recall correctly, this is the second one we've approved.
Yes.
Okay.
Yep, you had
Hannaford's in this
was
one.
the first, yes.
Okay.
And I would expect over time, probably
Right.
you'll see all of them
Okay.
requesting this. The second item is a request that we received from a group called Environment Massachusetts, requesting that the board consider signing on to a letter to send to Governor-elect Baker in support of solar energy in Massachusetts and increasing production of solar energy within Massachusetts. There's a copy of the letter in the packet. If you would like me to read it, I'm happy to read it or not.
It's short enough.
You would like me to read it?
I'll read it if you want. Okay.
So this is a letter to Governor-elect Baker, which says, as local and state civic leaders, we encourage you to make solar energy a key element of Massachusetts' energy future. By using solar energy to power our homes, businesses, schools, farms, and government buildings, we can reduce pollution, cut energy bills, and boost local economies. Currently, only a small fraction of Massachusetts' power comes from the sun. Solar is growing in Massachusetts and across the country. Over the past 3 years, solar capacity grew by 84% in Massachusetts. In the first half of 2014, more than half of the new electric power capacity installed in the U.S. was solar. Recent progress shows we can take it to the next level. Solar helps the environment, boosts local economies, and creates local jobs that cannot be outsourced. The solar industry jobs grew 10 times faster than the rest of the economy in 2013. And because solar has no fuel costs, it helps protect us from rising fossil fuel prices. For the sake of the environment, our health, and the economy, we ask that you join us in committing the state to getting 20% of our power from the sun by 2015. We can achieve that goal if we grow solar by 27% per year. The cost of solar is declining. The cost of air and water pollution from fossil fuels is growing faster, along with the threats posed by the climate change. Please help to set strong goals for solar in Massachusetts to put us on a path to clean energy leadership.
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Ebersol.
I support this. The only thing is, though, it says 20% by 2015, which would mean by the end of 2015 or January 1st. So that, I don't know whether that's realistic to, in the next month and a half or even the next year, to get to 20%.
I can't speak for them.
Right, and so I mean that they provided the proposed text, so
yeah.
You know, I guess the only thing I would be concerned is, I'm fine with signing it because this is certainly not committing them or us to it. I mean, I support solar energy. I've got it on our house, and there's issues with siting it and various things like that that can be resolved, but I think I would support this proposal.
As a recent homeowner who put solar on their home, and I was lucky enough that we have a good siting. By chance, as it turns out, I installed it in March, and now, of course, everybody across the Commonwealth is facing 25% increases, 25 to 30% increases in electricity rates from NSTAR and Unitil, and I'm missing NSTAR. National Grid, thank you. So, and I'm sure Western Mass as well. So that's the fourth one in the state. If you have, I support the program when properly cited, and certainly for homeowners, it makes all the sense in the world. If you can do it, if you have southerly exposures and not a lot of cover, it makes all the financial sense in the world, as well as helping the environment. So I would encourage people to do it, and I have no problem signing this as well. Anybody else? I would entertain a motion on this.
I move that we approve this letter to the Governor-elect Baker.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None.
The next item that I wanted to mention is an update on the Northeast Energy Direct project, the Tennessee Gas Pipeline Kinder Morgan project. We received a bulletin on November 5th. I'm sure it's most people who are following this project are aware, but I thought I'd take the opportunity to mention that the proposed open houses that had been scheduled for November and December have been put on hold so that public, towns and communities and other stakeholders have the opportunity to review the proposed routes. We do not have a proposed date for when the open houses will begin at this point in time. I do want to put something on our webpage, on the homepage. I thought we'd dedicate a section to this project. I have been in touch with one of the residents in town who has been following the project, and she has offered to provide some assistance. And this would be a place to put project information, facts, not opinions or announcing, different advocacy groups or anything like that, but just maybe a central location, because it is difficult to, unless you want to dedicate a fair amount of time, it's difficult to keep up with what's going on. So I'm hoping to do that within the next week or so and just put that information there.
That's a great idea, thank you.
Yep.
And that's it for me.
At some point, this board should probably take up the matter of what we support and don't support, but of course, we really want to be able to investigate and analyze the data that we asked for months ago, that now they're putting a hold on their own seminars so that we can do it, because they didn't provide it. Now I've seen a proposed route that goes through southern New Hampshire and bypasses us totally, so.
Really?
Although they may still have a lateral.
Spur, they still may have a spur, right.
They have like 5 different cross-state routes proposed.
Right. And as far as keeping track of it, I mean, I don't want to be somebody who's cynical about the whole thing, but a lot of this is, win by attrition, just by wearing people out. Who can keep track of everything that they do? Because all they file filings against their filings on a seemingly weekly basis at least. So it's really hard to keep track of what the progress of the project is doing at any one particular point. So, is that it?
That's it.
All right. I did want to mention, I don't know, I should have mentioned in announcements that tomorrow is the stormwater seminar, correct, at the library from 7 to 9. If you haven't pre-registered, pre-register. And I'm assuming that people who didn't know whether they'd be able to attend or not probably wouldn't be turned away, but I'm not sure. So,
No, there's room for 80 people, so.
So I don't know how many people have signed up.
About 50 people.
50.
Wow.
50.
Oh,
That's a good turnout.
So that would be a good seminar to go to, a good presentation tomorrow night. I hope to attend, so. I see nothing else on the agenda. Is there any final public comment from the board this evening?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Toll.
I was reflecting on several of our conversations this evening, and it strikes me that we've asked several times in several different forums for input from the public, whether it be formal public hearings or charrettes or everything else. And I sit on 3 committees that are trying to make recommendations to the town on pretty significant issues that I'm sure everybody will have an opinion on after the fact. It's important, all of our meetings are open, and frankly, when I contemplated public office, one of the things that scared me the most was open meeting. I've been 30 years in corporate, and I didn't know if I wanted to do everything in public, but I've become a big fan. And we meet several nights a week. We all try to do the right thing for the town. When we make recommendations, we bring them to budget meetings or the selectmen or town meeting or et cetera. And sometimes nobody comes to our public sessions, or a handful of people come to our charrettes, and a few hundred come to our town meetings. And it's just frustrating, and I just wanted to mention that there's plenty of opportunity to share your opinion, but it's not after the decisions were made by a handful of people.
I agree. I will say in recent past, in the last month, I have been able to attend not this board's meeting, but 2 other boards' meetings, the Zoning Board of Appeals and the Planning Board, where there was a significant attendance of local residents for projects that were before those 2 boards. And it was heartening to see that people really took initiative to come out and show their support or their opposition to those projects in large numbers and over many sessions. So that is the flip side.
And I think with the village district, I think you'll see that same thing. I think that people have not yet had an opportunity to see the text or to see the map. And once they do, I think you'll have that same type of attendance. So I think that's why it's important that that happen, much in advance of town meeting.
And I think the other part, to echo Jamie's comments, I think it's all the various boards' responsibilities to educate the public, because a lot of the things we do is pretty technical. And the average citizen doesn't have the time to understand what a zoning bylaw is, or the liquor license regulations, or a dog hearing, or anything. And sometimes we have to remind ourselves at the same time. So the boards and commissions that are doing a good job. And when we were talking to Adam, it was, here's what you probably need to do before town meeting, because then it'll be too late. And in order to build your case, you need to get the stakeholders involved. But Mike Savageau spoke up at the Stone Farm hearing and turned around and said to the people, this is the zoning for the property. You need to know what's in your zoning. Well, that's true, but they rely on the planning board to do certain things. But therefore, it's our responsibility to educate the public to say, all right, here's what the zoning is. Do you still like it? And that's going to be the case on the village district. The reuse of the buildings, the discussion, it changes a little bit, and some of it because it's real. We're building a school now, and now, well, what do we want the Passio School to be right next to it? What do we want the town hall? Do we want it to be the town hall? Do we want it to be community theater, which somebody once talked about, or something else? And I like what you're doing as far as saying the cable TV is really helpful. There's a lot of times I can't make the meetings, and as painful it is for the planning board to have to sit through its own meeting, then we get to watch it ourselves. Right. I think that's a wonderful opportunity. It'd almost be great if every board and committee could televise their committees. I know that's something, Tom, you've been advocating for a long time.
Yeah, I think we've come a long way in doing that. I think boards that never would have been considered for television, 5 to 7 years ago, are now on television regularly, which is excellent.
How do we increase that?
How do we increase?
Board of Health
the board.
Well, it's probably a couple of ways. I mean, first of all, we have probably more boards than we have weeknights. So we need a second facility to tape ones that coincide with somebody else who's being televised would be one thing we would probably need at some point. I think we're moving toward a second studio, and we've been doing it. Well, we have a studio, but a second live meeting room, aside from this one. That would be the most important. And then, as the board, as people see how much people rely on watching them live, and then now that PAC is putting them on YouTube, I mean, I've been able to watch ones that I've missed. I've been able to see ones that, again, I was at another meeting, so I want to see this other one. Those have been important things, and I think as more people rely on it, it kind of grows on itself so that more people expect it. So I think that's important.
And as we look at renovating buildings, there's the opportunity to add the equipment for it so that it could actually be done remotely from a central studio, although you want to have different cameras going. I know Joe McLaughlin has often come to various meetings, or other people have come to meetings to film a particular non-town hall meeting. I know people can take the camera out with training and various things like that to do other programming. So there's a lot of things that can be done. I'm looking forward to meeting with the PAC, hopefully with the policy process of what they can do to try to do additional outreach, not do it on a day-to-day basis, but try to encourage additional ways to reach out.
Sure. And one last note I want to say that we've gotten a couple of emails this week where residents were looking for minutes of meetings, and I just want to be clear about how that works. So whether a meeting is televised or not, if it isn't, obviously, the only thing after the meeting that you can go on is the minutes. If it's televised, then it's rebroadcast, and then it is put on YouTube, so you can always follow that. But the minutes are a special summary that has to be approved by the board whose meeting they summarize. And so once you have the meeting, there are no minutes of that meeting directly after it happens. They have to be written up. They have to be presented to the board at their next meeting. Sometimes there's modifications that require a delay. Sometimes they can approve them, but minutes don't go on any website of the towns until the boards approve them. And sometimes that takes some time, because sometimes some boards only meet once a month. So I would ask people's understanding about how minutes work. Minutes are not a transcription of the meeting. It is just an upper-level executive summary of what the actions were that were taken at the meeting, and therefore filter down a 3-hour meeting into maybe 2 or 3 pages where somebody can read them. But they don't go on instantaneously, and people should at least be aware of that. Now, they should not go beyond 3 or 4 months. That gets maybe a little excessive, and I think this board, we've made points, I know Mr. Ebersol has made points along the way, that we really need to get boards up to date on their minutes. But they don't happen the week after either, so people, there is that spot in the middle that people understand how they operate. So I wanted to address that because we did get several this week out of, just circumstance.
2 things. The town clerk is doing a good job of when a meeting is posted and the minutes are not received, they actually are contacting the boards to try to get it. If they don't respond, that's something different. Secondly, there's actually provision in the open meeting law that if the minutes are in draft form, they're technically a public record that somebody could request them, but they won't be posted on the website until they're done.
So just wanted to clarify that. Any other comment? Any public comment from the public? We do not have a meeting next week, so our next week meeting will be December 2nd. Okay, I would entertain a motion.
Motion to adjourn?
Second?
And before we take the vote, I want to wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving because we won't be meeting next week. So everybody, hope you have a happy and a healthy Thanksgiving. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Thank you and good night.
Historical.